Japanese Sika don't belong here. And if we don't deal with them, we don't manage them properly, all this vision of restoration of the Highlands of Scotland,
Heads up, looking. Yep.
will come to nothing.
Originally brought to the UK by aristocrats to add to their private fenced hunting estates, Japanese Sika deer eventually escaped and through generations have overpopulated the forests of Scotland, wreaking havoc on habitat and pressuring out native species. We have joined Neil Rowantree, a conservationist and professional deer manager, on his journey to reduce Sika populations and attempt to create an equilibrium within the Scottish habitat.
So this is very different to anything you've done in Scotland with me before, Andy. This part of Sutherland, they introduced Sika deer here as an ornamental species over 100 years ago. And then to meet the National Timber Reserve, they started creating all of these new woodlands. It was either the best deliberate mistake or a massive blunder. But they created this incredible habitat for Japanese Sika. And Japanese Sika, as you know, are one of the most invasive mammals on the planet. People that try to commercially grow timber have a massive problem with Sika because if they're put under any pressure, they're largely nocturnal. And forest design didn't really take deer management into the equation. And controlling Sika in here is what we're going to be doing, but it's pretty challenging stuff.
So this magazine holds
10 rounds to be able to shoot more than 1 or 2 deer at a time.
This fence was put in by opposing property owners with different agendas on deer management. Right now is a key example of how hard it is to manage a population when it's exceedingly overpopulated. There's 8 deer on the other side of the fence that we cannot touch. But the reality is the deer know how to get through the fence. So when the pressure in the managed area gets to be too much, all they do is push over into safe haven, and then they come back. What I used to do as part of my head ranger role before I shifted up to chief rangers, I go through everybody's beat. The basic principle was that you would make sure that all of the area of the forest was adequately covered, so the population was kept in balance. They've now moved to a system where they've made the majority of the rangers redundant. So that takes jobs out of the local community. And then the venison is now going into single buyer contracts. So that's being shipped away out of the Highlands as well. And what they're doing now is they're paying contractors. Now the contractors get paid by the animal killed. So the further they go from their vehicle, and the more time they spend shooting one deer, the less financially viable it is for them. Right. So in this part here, we're looking over onto public land, but it's a long way from a road, and the access is poor. And what we're finding now, where we manage ground next to the state, is exactly what you're saying tonight. Here, nothing, because of culling pressure. That side, the population's booming. Yes, in a nutshell. Yeah. So it might look on paper to be more economically efficient, but in reality it's not. A reality that managing a Sika population is nearly impossible because these Sika know where to go when there is hunting pressure. And here we reduce the numbers down. 1, to try and get rid of an alien non-native. 2, to get a forest crop away. That side of the fence, entirely different objective. Plus 30 Sika per square kilometre at least. And what we're finding here now is we push the numbers down. Last autumn and last winter cull, so 2022, 23, 4% of the females were carrying twins. And what's starting to happen now is this year, just shy of 9% were carrying twins. So something is starting to change here. Get your head round what you wish for. Yeah. Because you might be rid of your native Scottish red deer and end up with alien tree species being the perfect habitat for an alien deer species. At the moment, government doesn't want to talk about Sika deer. It's all about open country like this, open vista, and having the wild Scottish red deer population at a low level. And what they don't realise is by forcing the red deer population down, they're creating the Garden of Eden for these guys. Yeah. And the cost of culling them is going to be far higher than culling red deer. consistent stalking is nearly impossible. The most uneven country I've ever walked in, mixed with the wettest soil you could possibly try to tiptoe around, but your foot sinks in every other step.
We're getting to the end of the afternoon. You know this from your elk hunting. And you'd expect now if there was red deer in this area, they'd be on the move. But the Sika are still 30-40 minutes before they'll do anything. And this is what makes them labour intensive and hard to get to grips with. It's really at the last light that they start to move around. And they've got a very dark grey, almost black coat. And you'll see as the light fades and they start to emerge, they're really quite hard to pick out.
Yeah, well, they have all the advantage here too.
Challenging and frustrating are the two words that you'll take away with you.
Although we don't use thermals back home, this is a pretty important piece of kit to have for this kind of job. I kind of half expected to pull up with this thermal and they'd be everywhere. But we haven't seen one. That's hunting.
It's like something at the top.
That's a deer.
And he's at about 331 meters right now. What might happen here now is the female and the older stags went that way, and one young guy went that way. There's an outside chance he'll go. Where is everybody? And circle around. Come back. It seems like Sika hunting's at 1 in a million this, 1 in a million that. And eventually, you get your 1 in a million.
Heads up looking. Yep.
Japanese Sika. You shot them before?
No.
There are at least 7 subspecies in the island of Japan alone. So when they came here to Scotland, we know that they came from at least 2 sources. And what's happened here is we've ended up with our own unique Rose Hall blend. And that's a yearling male. He's not a particularly stunning yearling male.
It's not going to set any world records.
No. But from what we've been talking about and everything that you're kind of supporting us in here, is this telling the story of the year in the life of Sika deer. Is in biodiversity terms, they're now considered by the ICUN as one of the most invasive species on the planet. So they look perfectly at home in this woodland setting here, but they're not native to here. And if we're talking about biodiversity loss and species loss and habitat loss, what confuses me at the moment is that we're drastically trying to reduce Scottish red deer numbers, and yet we've got an alien in our midst that's not native to our forests, as we spoke about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not quite sure how it works, and this is why hunting and hunters are so important.
That's right. So we're doing our part today, trying to call this herd, get it under manageable numbers. Like you said, right now they're well over 30
Per square kilometre.
per square kilometer, and they should be less than 10.
Well, the government has set objectives, and at the moment they're consulting on it, and they're saying that there should only be 2 deer per square kilometre. Now, in the open mountain vistas behind you, the traditional Scottish red deer herd is probably going to take a severe reduction, if not almost an unscience-based reduction. And if it's for biodiversity enhancement, all we have to do is look down at your feet and turn and look that way and go, I'm confused by this.
Neil's frustrations were shared this week. Frustration to why a non-native species appears to be getting preference within the political circles, and frustration at some level appreciation for how hard these beasts are to hunt and manage. Hunters are the only effective instrument to manage this habitat, and there aren't enough hunters to do the job.